Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES Horizon, watching the stars drift past through the main view screen. The ship had been traveling for 3 weeks now, moving deeper into unexplored space than any human vessel had gone before. This was supposed to be a simple survey mission, the kind that happened dozens of times each year as humanity slowly mapped more of the galaxy. Jake was a seasoned captain with 15 years of deep space experience. He had short brown hair that was starting to show gray at the temples and calm blue eyes that missed nothing. His crew trusted him completely, and he had never lost a single person under his command. That record meant everything to him. "Captain, we're picking up some strange readings ahead," called out Lieutenant Mike Torres from his position at the sensor station. His young face looked puzzled as he studied the data flowing across his screens. "I've never seen anything like this before." Jake walked over to look at the readings himself. The numbers didn't make sense. Energy signatures were spiking and dropping in patterns that seemed impossible according to everything humans knew about physics. The readings were coming from the Kepler 442 system, which should have been empty according to all their star charts. "Are the sensors working correctly?" Jake asked. "I've run 3 full diagnostics, sir. Everything checks out perfectly. These readings are real, but I don't understand what could be causing them." Dr. Lisa Campbell looked up from her science station on the other side of the bridge. She was the ship's chief scientist, a tall woman with long red hair and green eyes that always seemed to be thinking about complex problems. Lisa had joined the mission specifically to study any new life forms they might discover. "Captain, those energy readings are unlike anything in our databases. The quantum signatures are completely off the charts. Whatever is causing this has power levels that dwarf anything we've ever encountered." Commander Ryan Parker, Jake's second in command, moved closer to examine the data. Ryan was a solid, dependable officer who had served with Jake for over 5 years. He had dark skin and kept his black hair cut military short. His serious expression showed he understood this was no ordinary discovery. "Sir, should we maintain course or change direction? These readings could indicate a dangerous phenomenon." Jake considered the options carefully. As captain, the safety of his crew was his first responsibility. But humanity had joined the Galactic Council only recently, and Earth needed all the scientific discoveries it could get to prove humans belonged among the advanced species of the galaxy. "We continue toward the source, but we go in carefully. Yellow alert. All departments report readiness status." The next few hours passed slowly, as the horizon moved deeper into the Kepler 442 system. The energy readings grew stronger with each passing minute, and new patterns began to emerge in the data. Dr. Campbell worked frantically at her station, trying to make sense of what they were seeing. "Captain, I'm detecting debris fields ahead," reported Mike from sensors. "Massive amounts of scattered material, but it's not normal space junk. The atomic composition is completely random, like something broke down matter at the molecular level." Lisa looked up from her work with wide eyes. "Jake, I think we need to see this with our own eyes. The debris patterns suggest this was once a populated system. Multiple planets, space stations, entire civilizations. But everything has been reduced to basic atomic particles." "Put it on screen," Jake ordered. The main view screen shifted to show the space ahead of them. What they saw made everyone on the bridge fall silent. Stretching out before them was a graveyard of worlds. Where planets should have orbited a yellow star, there were only clouds of glittering dust. Space stations and ships had been reduced to streams of scattered atoms drifting in the void. "My God," whispered Ryan. "What could do something like this?" "Doctor," Campbell's fingers flew over her console as she analyzed the debris patterns. "Captain, I'm reading traces of at least 12 different civilizations in this system. Different technology levels, different materials, different energy signatures. This wasn't a natural disaster or a war between species. Something systematically destroyed everything here." Jake felt a chill run down his spine. In all his years of space exploration, he had never seen anything so completely devastating. "How long ago did this happen?" "Based on the dispersal patterns of the debris, I'd estimate between 50 and 100 years ago. But Captain, there's something else. I'm detecting similar quantum signatures in the surrounding systems. Whatever did this has been moving through this entire sector of space." Lieutenant Torres spoke up from his station. "Sir, I've been plotting the destruction patterns Dr. Campbell found. If I'm reading this correctly, whatever caused this devastation is moving in a specific direction through the galaxy. Show me, Jake ordered. A holographic star map appeared above the bridge's central console. Red markers indicated systems where similar destruction had occurred. The pattern was clear and terrifying. The path of destruction cut straight through, explored space, heading directly toward the core worlds of the galaxy. Where does this path lead? Jake asked, though he was afraid he already knew the answer. Mike worked at his console for several minutes before responding. Sir, if this pattern continues, the destruction path leads directly through Proxima Centauri, then toward the Sol system. Earth is directly in line with whatever is causing this. The bridge fell completely silent. Every person there understood what this meant. Something was moving through the galaxy, destroying entire civilizations, and Earth lay directly in its path. Dr. Campbell broke the silence. Captain, we need to study this more carefully. I want to send probes into the debris fields and collect samples. If we can understand what happened here, we might be able to figure out what's causing it and how to stop it. Do it, Jake ordered. Ryan, I want you to start preparing a detailed report for Galactic Council Command. This is bigger than just a human problem. Over the next 6 hours, the crew of the Horizon worked frantically to gather as much information as possible. The probe sent back data that painted an increasingly terrifying picture. The destruction wasn't random violence or natural phenomena. It was systematic, efficient, and complete. Captain, Lisa called out, her voice tight with worry. I've analyzed the probe data. Whatever destroyed these civilizations has a specific method. It breaks down matter at the quantum level, converting it directly into energy. The process is incredibly efficient. Nothing is wasted, nothing survives. Are we talking about some kind of weapon? No, sir, I don't think so. The energy conversion pattern suggests this is how something feeds. Captain, I believe we're looking at evidence of a species that consumes entire star systems for sustenance. Jake stared at the debris fields on the main screen. Billions of lives had once existed in this system. Now there was nothing left but scattered atoms drifting in space, and whatever had done this was heading toward Earth. How fast is it moving? Dr. Campbell checked her calculations twice before answering. Based on the timeline of destruction across multiple systems, I estimate it will reach human space within 5 to 7 years. Time enough to warn everyone and prepare defenses. If the Galactic Council takes our warning seriously and acts immediately, maybe. But Jake, looking at the scale of destruction here, I'm not sure any current technology can stop something like this. Captain Morrison made his decision. Set course for the Galactic Council station at maximum speed. Ryan, prepare that report. We need to warn everyone about what's coming. As the Horizon turned away from the dead system and jumped to faster-than-light travel, Jake couldn't shake the feeling that what they had discovered would change everything. Humanity had found evidence of a threat unlike anything the galaxy had ever faced. The question was whether anyone would believe them in time to do something about it. The stars streaked past as the ship raced toward civilization, carrying news that could save or doom every living being in the galaxy. The Galactic Council station hung in space like a massive crystal, its transparent walls reflecting the light of 3 nearby stars. Captain Jake Morrison had seen it many times before, but today the beautiful structure felt more like a courthouse, where humanity's fate would be decided. The UES Horizon docked smoothly at one of the station's many ports, and Jake felt his stomach tighten with worry. Ambassador Claire Watson was waiting for them at the airlock. She was a smart woman in her 50s with gray hair pulled back in a neat bun and sharp brown eyes that missed nothing. Claire had spent the last 8 years building relationships with the other species in the galaxy, working hard to earn respect for humanity among beings who saw humans as newcomers and primitives. Captain Morrison, she said as Jake stepped off his ship. I received your preliminary report during your journey here. Are you absolutely certain about what you found? Yes, Ambassador. Dr. Campbell has triple-checked all the data. We found evidence of systematic destruction across multiple star systems, and the pattern shows it heading directly toward human space. Claire nodded grimly. I've already requested an emergency session with the full council. This won't be easy, Jake. Many of the member species still see humans as panic-prone children who don't understand the galaxy's true dangers. They walked through the station's corridors toward the Great Council chamber. The halls were filled with beings from across the galaxy. Tall, blue-skinned Altarians walked past with their heads held high, looking down at everyone else. Crystalline, beings that looked like living gemstones floated by, their bodies chiming softly as they moved. Small, furry creatures scurried between the legs of larger species, chattering in high-pitched voices. Dr. Lisa Campbell and Commander Ryan Parker followed behind Jake, both carrying data tablets loaded with their evidence. Lisa looked nervous, but determined, while Ryan maintained his usual calm military bearing. The council chamber was enormous, with seating for representatives from all 47 member species. The chamber's dome showed a perfect view of space above, making it feel like they were floating among the stars. As Jake and his team entered, conversation stopped and hundreds of eyes turned to stare at the humans. Chancellor Vexhai of the Altarian Empire sat in the highest seat, his tall blue form draped in ceremonial robes that marked his ancient noble bloodline. The Altarians had been the dominant species in this part of the galaxy for over 10,000 years, and they never let anyone forget it. Vexhai's purple eyes showed nothing but contempt as he looked down at the human delegation. "So," Vexhai said, his voice carrying clearly through the chamber's advanced acoustics, "the newest members of our council request emergency time to address us all. How interesting that humans always seem to find emergencies wherever they go." Several species laughed at this comment. The insectoid klaxons clicked their mandibles in amusement, while the gaseous nebula folk flickered with colors that Jake had learned meant they were entertained. Only a few species remained silent, including the aquatic Murthani and the unusual silicon-based architects. Ambassador Watson stepped forward. "Honored Chancellor, Captain Morrison and his crew have discovered evidence of a threat to all civilized life in this galaxy. I request permission for them to present their findings." "Very well," Vexhai said with a wave of his hand. "Let us hear what has frightened the humans this time." Jake moved to the center of the chamber, feeling the weight of hundreds of stares. He had faced down pirates and survived solar storms, but standing here felt more dangerous than any physical threat he had ever encountered. "Honored members of the Council," he began. 3 days ago, my ship discovered evidence of systematic destruction in the Kepler 442 system. 12 different civilizations were completely eliminated, their matter converted to energy by an unknown force. Dr. Campbell activated the holographic projectors, filling the center of the chamber with images of the destroyed systems. The floating debris and empty space where planets should have been created a haunting display that made several species shift uncomfortably in their seats. "Our analysis shows this destruction follows a clear pattern across multiple sectors," Lisa explained, her voice steady despite her nervousness. "The entity responsible moves systematically through space, consuming everything in its path. Based on the timeline and direction, it will reach the core worlds of the galaxy within 5 to 7 years." The chamber erupted in noise. Some species argued loudly among themselves while others demanded more details. Chancellor Vexhai called for silence with a sharp gesture. "Humans," he said coldly. "You show us pictures of empty space and claim some invisible monster is coming to destroy us all. Where is your proof that this so-called threat even exists?" Commander Parker stepped forward. "Sir, we have quantum signature. Readings that show massive energy manipulation on a scale far beyond any known technology. The patterns are consistent across dozens of star systems." "Patterns in space dust," scoffed the representative of the crystalline collective. "A being that looked like a walking diamond. The humans see shapes in clouds and call them dragons. This is fear-mongering, nothing more." The klaxon representative clicked rapidly, which Jake's translator converted to words. "In 10,000 years of spaceflight, we have never encountered such a threat. Why would it appear now just when humans join our council? Very convenient timing." Jake felt his anger rising but forced himself to stay calm. "The timing isn't convenient at all. This threat has been moving through the galaxy for millions of years. We found it because we were exploring sectors that more advanced species abandoned long ago." "Abandoned for good reason," Vexhai replied. "Those regions are worthless. No resources, no strategic value. Only humans would waste time in such places." "Doctor?" Campbell activated another set of images. These quantum signatures match readings we've detected in ancient cosmic background radiation. This isn't a new threat. It's an old one that's been systematically moving through the galaxy for eons. A new voice spoke up from across the chamber. Representative Choral Song of the Myrthani raised one of her webbed hands. The aquatic species rarely spoke in council sessions, making her words carry extra weight. The waters of deep space carry old songs, she said in her melodic voice. Our ancient records speak of the great silence that moved between the stars in the time before time. We thought these were myths. Myths and legends, Chancellor Vexhai said dismissively. The council deals in facts, not stories. The silicon-based, architect representative, a being made of living crystal and metal, spoke in harmonic tones. Our deep memory cores contain references to entities that consumed light itself. We assumed these were corrupted data fragments. Jake seized on this support. Then you have independent confirmation of what we found. This threat is real, and it's heading toward all of us. Even if such a thing existed, said the Nebula Folk representative, its gaseous form shifting colors rapidly, what could any of us do against something that destroys entire star systems? Your own data shows it has power beyond our comprehension. We don't know until we try, Jake replied. But we need to start preparing now. We need to study this threat, develop countermeasures, and coordinate our defenses. The chamber fell into heated debate. Species argued with each other in dozens of languages, creating a cacophony of sound that the translation systems struggled to handle. Jake watched the chaos and felt his hope sinking. Chancellor Vexhai finally called for order and a formal vote. All those in favor of treating the human claims as a legitimate threat requiring council action? Jake counted the raised hands, tentacles, and other appendages that indicated support. The Myrthani voted yes. The Zephyrians, an insectoid species Jake had barely heard of, also supported them. The silicon-based architects added their harmonic agreement. With humanity's vote, that made 4 species out of 47. All opposed? The vast majority of the chamber voted against taking any action. 43 species rejected humanity's, warning as fear-mongering and panic. Chancellor Vexhai stood tall in his ceremonial robes. The council has spoken. The human claims are rejected as unsubstantiated and alarmist. Furthermore, this council formally censures humanity for attempting to spread panic without proper authorization or evidence. Ambassador Watson stepped forward. Chancellor, what will it take to convince you? How much evidence do you need? Evidence that doesn't exist, Vexhai replied coldly. If such a threat were real, the advanced species of this galaxy would have detected it long ago. Humanity's sensors are primitive, their analysis methods flawed. This session is concluded. As the various species began filing out of the chamber, Jake felt a crushing weight of disappointment. They had tried to warn everyone, and almost no one had listened. Earth and all the human colonies were still in the path of something that had destroyed countless civilizations, and now they would face it alone. Representative Choral Song of the Myrthani approached them as the chamber emptied. Captain Morrison, she said quietly, the deep currents speak of coming darkness. My people will prepare even if the council will not. The Zephyrian representative, a being that looked like a cross between a praying mantis and a butterfly, also stopped near them. The swarm remembers old hungers, we too will make ready. The journey back to Earth felt longer than usual. Captain Jake Morrison stood in his quarters aboard the UES Horizon, staring out at the stars and thinking about the disaster they were racing toward. In 5 years, maybe less, something would arrive that could destroy every human world. And almost nobody in the galaxy believed it was real. When they finally reached Earth's orbit, Jake was amazed by what he saw. The planet was surrounded by more ships than he had ever seen in one place. Military vessels, cargo haulers, and construction ships filled the space around humanity's home world. Work lights blazed day and night as crews built new defense platforms and weapon systems. Admiral Kate Sullivan met them at the orbital station. She was a tough woman in her early 60s with short silver hair and the kind of steady presence that made everyone around her feel safer. Kate had been fighting for humanity's safety long before they joined the Galactic Council, and she wasn't about to stop now. Captain Morrison, she said as Jake stepped off the transport. I've read your full report 3 times. Tell me honestly, how bad is this situation? As bad as it gets, Admiral. We're facing something that has wiped out dozens of civilizations, and we're essentially alone in preparing for it. Kate nodded grimly. Then we'd better get to work. Come with me. There are some people you need to meet. They took a shuttle down to Earth's surface, landing at the massive military complex that had been built in the Colorado mountains. Jake was surprised to see how much had changed in just the few weeks he'd been gone. New buildings covered the landscape, and thousands of people worked around the clock on projects he couldn't identify. In the main briefing room, Jake found himself facing some of the smartest people on Earth. Dr. Lisa Campbell was already there, working with a team of scientists he didn't recognize. She looked up as he entered and gave him a tired smile. "Jake, meet Dr. Danny Martinez," she said, indicating a young man with dark hair and intense brown eyes. "He's our best physicist, and he's been working on theoretical countermeasures to the Devourer threat." Danny stood up and shook Jake's hand. "Captain, your discovery has turned our understanding of physics upside down. The energy levels we're talking about shouldn't be possible, but the evidence is clear. We're dealing with something that can manipulate matter at the quantum level." "Can we fight it?" Jake asked directly. "Maybe," Danny replied. "We've been working on a theory that the Devourers might have a weakness. If they convert matter to energy through quantum manipulation, there might be a frequency that disrupts their process." Dr. Campbell activated a holographic display showing complex mathematical equations. "We call it quantum disruption. If we can generate the right interference pattern, we might be able to break down their molecular cohesion." Admiral Sullivan entered the room with Commander Ryan Parker, who had been assigned to the defense project. "Show him the prototypes," Kate ordered. They walked to another section of the complex where engineers were testing strange-looking weapons. Betty Rogers, the lead engineer, was a small woman with blonde hair tied back in a ponytail and oil stains on her work clothes. She looked up from a massive device that hummed with contained energy. "This is our first working quantum disruptor," Betty explained proudly. "It's about the size of a small building right now, but we're working on making them smaller and more powerful." Jake watched as the device fired a beam of invisible energy at a target made of various materials. Where the beam hit, the materials simply fell apart at the molecular level, becoming clouds of harmless atoms. "Impressive," Jake said. "But will it work against something the size of a star system?" "That's the problem," Betty admitted. "We'd need hundreds of these devices all perfectly coordinated to affect something that large, and we don't know if the Devourers can adapt to our attacks." Admiral Sullivan led them to the command center where huge screens showed the status of defense preparations across human space. "We've been building for 3 months now," she explained. "Every human world is getting defense platforms armed with quantum disruptors. We're also building early warning networks and evacuation plans." Commander Parker pointed to one of the displays. "The Murthani have been helping us. They've shared some of their biotechnology, and we've learned their ancient records contain more references to the Devourers than we initially thought." "What do the records say?" Jake asked. "That's the disturbing part," Ryan replied. "According to Murthani mythology, the Devourers aren't just random destroyers. They seem to follow specific patterns, almost like they're herding civilizations into certain areas of the galaxy." Dr. Campbell looked up from her workstation. "That matches what we found in the debris fields. The destruction wasn't random. It followed logical paths through space, as if something was driving populations toward specific locations." Jake felt a chill run down his spine. "You're saying they might be intelligent, that this isn't just mindless consumption?" "We don't know for sure," Danny replied, "but the patterns suggest some kind of purpose behind the destruction." "Admiral," Sullivan called everyone's attention to the main display. "People, we have less than 5 years to prepare for something that has never been defeated. The good news is that humanity has advantages the destroyed civilizations didn't have." "Such as?" Jake asked. "Warning," Kate replied simply. "Every other species they've encountered was surprised. We know they're coming and we know roughly when. That gives us time to prepare." Betty Rogers wiped her hands on a rag and joined the conversation. "We're also developing new communication systems that can send instant warnings across human space. If the Devourers hit one of our outer colonies, every other world will know immediately." The Zephyrians have been sharing intelligence too, Commander Parker added. Their swarm-based society gives them a different perspective on fighting large-scale threats. They're developing new tactics specifically for this kind of enemy. Dr. Campbell activated another display showing the current status of their research. We've made some breakthroughs in understanding how the Devourers convert matter to energy. The process creates specific quantum signatures that we can detect from great distances. How far away can we spot them? Jake asked. Our new sensor network should give us at least 6 months' warning before they reach any human world, Danny replied. That's enough time to evacuate civilian populations and position our defenses. Admiral Sullivan looked around the room at all the busy scientists and engineers. The question is whether all this preparation will be enough. We're essentially betting the survival of our species on untested technology and theories. Jake thought about the destroyed systems he had seen, the complete devastation that left nothing but scattered atoms. Admiral, what's the backup plan, if our defenses fail? Kate's expression grew even more serious. Deep space evacuation ships. We're building them in secret at hidden shipyards throughout human space. If Earth falls, at least some of humanity will survive to carry on. How many people can we save? Maybe 10% of our population, if we're lucky and have enough warning. The weight of that number settled on everyone in the room. They were preparing to defend billions of lives with experimental weapons against an enemy that had never been defeated. Betty Rogers broke the silence. There is one more thing. We've been working on something we call the cascade effect. If we can position enough quantum disruptors in the right pattern, we might be able to create a chain reaction that affects a much larger area. How much larger? Jake asked. Theoretically, we could disrupt quantum cohesion across multiple star systems simultaneously, but it would require perfect timing and coordination of hundreds of devices. Dr. Campbell nodded. It's our best shot at stopping something the size of the Devourer cloud, but we'll only get one chance to make it work. Admiral Sullivan stood up and looked out at the bustling activity visible through the command center's windows. Then we'd better make sure we get it right. Captain Morrison, I'm assigning you to coordinate with our alien allies. The Myrthani and Zephyrians are our only supporters in this fight. Jake accepted the assignment with mixed feelings. It felt good to be doing something useful, but the scope of the threat still seemed overwhelming. What about the rest of the galaxy? Are we just going to let them be destroyed? We'll warn them again when the Devourers get closer, Kate replied. Maybe when the threat becomes obvious, some of them will listen, but we can't count on it. As Jake left the command center to begin his new assignment, he looked back at all the people working desperately to save their species. Humanity had been dismissed and insulted by the galaxy's established powers, but they weren't giving up. They would face this cosmic threat with courage and ingenuity, even if they had to do it alone. The next few years would determine whether human determination was enough to survive against something that had destroyed countless civilizations before them. Captain Sam Foster was enjoying his morning coffee aboard the UES Guardian when the alarm started screaming. The ship's bridge erupted into controlled chaos as his crew rushed to their stations, fingers flying over control panels as they tried to understand what was happening. Captain, we're receiving massive distress signals from the Rim territories, called out Lieutenant Jenny Walsh from the communications station. Her face was pale as she listened to the incoming messages. Sir, entire star systems are going dark. The Canthari Empire has stopped transmitting completely. Sam set down his coffee cup with hands that were suddenly not quite steady. The Canthari Empire controlled 12 star systems on the galaxy's outer edge. They were one of the most advanced species in the Council, with technology that humans could barely understand. If they had gone silent, it could only mean one thing. Get me Admiral Sullivan immediately, Sam ordered, and sound general quarters. This isn't a drill. The next few hours brought news that confirmed humanity's worst fears. The Devourers had arrived exactly when Dr. Campbell's calculations said they would. System after system fell silent as the consuming darkness swept through the galaxy's rim. The early warning networks that humanity had built detected the approaching threat, but the readings were beyond anything they had prepared for. Dr. Tony Clark worked frantically at his research station deep inside Earth's military complex. Tony was a young scientist who had joined the Anti-Devourer project 2 years earlier, and his brilliant mind had helped solve several key problems with the quantum disruptor technology. Now he stared at sensor readings that made his blood run cold. "Admiral Sullivan, you need to see this," he called out as Kate entered the research lab. "The Devourers aren't what we thought they were." Kate looked at the holographic display showing the approaching threat. Instead of the discrete entities they had expected, the display showed massive clouds of what looked like living darkness, stretching across multiple light-years of space. The clouds moved with purpose, flowing around obstacles and maintaining formation like flocks of cosmic birds. "How big are they?" Kate asked quietly. "Each cloud is larger than most solar systems," Tony replied, his voice barely above a whisper. "And there are dozens of them, all moving in coordination. Admiral, we're not facing individual creatures, we're facing something like a galactic ecosystem." Captain Jake Morrison arrived at the research station having been recalled from his coordination work with the alien allies. His face showed the strain of the past few days as reports continued pouring in from across the galaxy. "The Murthani have confirmed our worst fears," Jake reported. "Their deep space monitoring stations detected the Devourers 2 weeks ago. The entities move faster than our calculations predicted. They'll reach the core worlds within months, not years." Admiral Sullivan studied the tactical displays showing the current positions of both human forces and the approaching threat. "What's the status of our defenses?" Commander Ryan Parker materialized next to the holographic projector. His image transmitted from the command ship UES Defiance. "All quantum disruptor networks are online and ready. We have 300 platforms positioned throughout human space with backup power systems and redundant controls." "Will it be enough?" Kate asked directly. Ryan hesitated before answering. "Against what we originally expected to face, yes. Against this..." He gestured at the massive clouds shown in the display. "We're going to need everything working perfectly, and we're going to need some luck." Dr. Lisa Campbell's voice came through the communication system from her position aboard the research vessel, UES Discovery. "Admiral, I've been analyzing the energy signatures from the destroyed systems. The Devourers don't just consume matter randomly. They seem to be extracting something specific from each civilization they encounter." "What kind of something?" Kate demanded. "Information," Lisa replied. "The quantum patterns suggest they're not just converting matter to energy. They're reading and storing the quantum signatures of everything they consume. They're learning from each civilization they destroy." The implications of this discovery hit everyone in the room like a physical blow. The Devourers weren't just mindless destroyers. They were collecting the knowledge and experiences of entire species, growing stronger and smarter with each world they consumed. Tony Clark looked up from his calculations with wide eyes. If Dr. Campbell is right, then every civilization they've destroyed has made them more dangerous. They know how our technology works because they've consumed species with similar capabilities. Jake felt his heart sink. So our quantum disruptors might not work at all. "They might work once," Tony replied grimly. "But if the Devourers survive the first attack, they'll adapt. We won't get a second chance." Admiral Sullivan made a command decision that would determine the fate of humanity. "Then we don't hold anything back. We hit them with everything we have all at once and we make it count." Captain Sam Foster's voice crackled through the communication system from his position near the galaxy's rim. "Admiral, I can see them. Now. The Helix Nebula colonies just went dark and I'm looking directly at the cause." "Describe what you're seeing, Captain," Kate ordered. Sam's voice was tight with fear and awe. "They're not ships or creatures in any sense we understand. They look like clouds of living shadow that bend space around them. When they touch a planet, it just dissolves. The matter breaks down into energy that gets absorbed into the cloud. Mass? How fast are they moving?" "Faster than our best ships, Admiral, and they're not following normal space-time physics. They seem to move through dimensions we can't even detect." Dr. Campbell's research team had been monitoring the destruction from a safe distance, using long-range sensors to study the Devourers in action. Her findings were both fascinating and terrifying. "The entities communicate with each other through quantum entanglement," she reported. "They share information instantly across vast distances. When one cloud learns something new, they all know it immediately." Jake studied the tactical situation with growing dread. "So we're not just fighting individual threats. We're fighting a collective intelligence that spans light years and has the accumulated knowledge of thousands of dead civilizations." "That's exactly what we're fighting," Kate replied. The question is whether human ingenuity can overcome cosmic-level intelligence. Betty Rogers, the chief engineer, had been working around the clock to prepare the quantum disruptor network for actual combat. Her latest report brought both hope and concern. "The good news is that all our systems are functioning perfectly," she announced. "The bad news is that we've detected some kind of scanning behavior from the approaching clouds. They're probing our defenses from hundreds of light years away." "Are they learning about our technology?" Jake asked. "Almost certainly. But we've built in some surprises they won't expect. The cascade effect system is completely shielded and undetectable until we activate it." Admiral Sullivan gathered her senior staff for what might be their final planning meeting. The Devourers were now close enough that their energy signatures were affecting nearby star systems, causing solar flares and gravitational anomalies that disrupted space travel. "People, we've spent 4 years preparing for this moment," Kate said to the assembled officers and scientists. "Our quantum disruptor network represents the most advanced technology humanity has ever created. The cascade effect, if it works, will either save the galaxy or announce our failure to the universe." Commander Parker leaned forward in his chair. "What's the plan if the cascade fails?" "Then we fall back to Earth and make our final stand there," Kate replied simply. "The evacuation ships are ready if needed, but I'd rather die fighting than run away." Dr. Tony Clark had been running final calculations on their chances of success. "Admiral, based on what we know about the Devourer's capabilities and our own technology, I estimate we have approximately a 15% chance of stopping them completely. And if we only damage them, then they'll adapt to our weapons and finish destroying the galaxy within a few years instead of a few decades." Jake looked around the room at all the people who had worked so hard to save their species. 15% is better than 0%, and humanity has beaten longer odds before. Admiral Sullivan stood up and activated the general communication system that would reach every human ship and station in the galaxy. "All units, this is Admiral Sullivan. The time for preparation is over. The Devourers will reach our outer defense perimeter in 72 hours. We are the only thing standing between cosmic destruction and billions of innocent lives. 4 years ago, the galaxy dismissed our warnings and refused to help. Now they're paying the price for their arrogance. But we won't abandon them, because that's not who we are. In 3 days, we find out whether human determination can overcome a threat that has never been defeated. I believe in every one of you, and I believe in what we've built together. Make your families proud. Make your species proud." As the communication ended, Jake looked out at the stars and wondered how many of them would still be shining when this was over. The greatest battle in galactic history was about to begin, and humanity stood alone against the darkness that had consumed countless worlds. The Devourers were coming, and there would be no second chances. The space around the outer human colonies looked like something from a nightmare. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES Redemption, humanity's newest and most powerful warship, watching as massive clouds of living darkness approached. Their defense line, the Devourers, stretched across space like cosmic storms, their edges crackling with energy that bent light itself. "All ships report ready, Captain," called out Lieutenant Mike Torres from his communication station. The young officer had requested transfer to the front line, despite being offered safer assignments. "Quantum disruptor network is online and standing by." Jake nodded grimly. Around his ship, 300 human vessels waited in formation. They were joined by the organic bioships of the Merthani, which looked like enormous sea creatures swimming through space, and the swarm fighters of the Zephyrians, tiny ships that moved in perfect coordination like schools of fish. Admiral Kate Sullivan's voice came through the fleet communication system from her flagship. "All units, this is Admiral Sullivan. The enemy will reach our perimeter in 30 minutes. Remember, we only get one shot at the cascade effect. Make it count." Dr. Lisa Campbell worked frantically at her science station aboard the UES Discovery, monitoring the approaching Devourers with every sensor humanity possessed. What she saw filled her with both terror and amazement. The entities moved with purpose that showed clear intelligence, flowing around obstacles and communicating through quantum signals. "Captain Morrison," she called out over the communication link. "The Devourers are scanning our formation. They're trying to understand our technology before they attack." "Let them look," Jake replied. "They won't see what really matters until it's too late." Commander Lucy Hayes commanded the stealth ship UES Shadow, positioned deep within the Devourer cloud where no normal vessel could survive. Her ship was equipped with the most advanced cloaking technology humanity had ever developed, making it invisible to the entity's quantum senses. Lucy was a brave officer who had volunteered for what everyone knew was a suicide mission. Shadow to Fleet Command, she whispered into her communication system. I'm inside the primary cloud mass. The disruptor array is ready for deployment, but I need the enemy to be in perfect position. Dr. Tony Clark monitored the battle from Earth's command center, his fingers dancing over control panels as he coordinated the quantum disruptor network. Every platform throughout human space was linked together, creating a web of destructive energy that could theoretically tear apart matter at the subatomic level. Cascade system is ready, he announced to Admiral Sullivan. All 300 power platforms report green status. When Commander Hayes deploys the central array, we'll have approximately 10 seconds to achieve perfect synchronization. The first contact between human forces and the Devourers was like nothing anyone had ever seen before. The entities reached out with tendrils of pure energy that could disintegrate anything they touched. Human ships opened fire with conventional weapons, but the energy beams and projectiles simply vanished into the darkness without effect. Captain Sam Foster watched his sister ship, the UES Guardian, disappear into one of the smaller Devourer clouds. The vessel simply ceased to exist, its matter converted to energy that made the cloud grow larger and brighter. Sam felt sick as he realized that his friends aboard that ship were now part of the enemy. All units, fall back to position 2, Admiral Sullivan ordered. Conventional weapons are useless, prepare for cascade deployment. The Merthani bioships released clouds of microscopic organisms that had been specially engineered to interfere with quantum processes. The tiny creatures swarmed around the Devourers like living static, creating small disruptions in the entity's energy patterns. It wasn't enough to hurt them, but it bought the human fleet precious time. The Zephyrian swarm fighters attacked with precision that only their insect-like minds could achieve. Thousands of small ships dove into the Devourer clouds, each one carrying a quantum disruption charge. Most of the fighters were destroyed instantly, but their sacrifice created windows of weakness that larger ships could exploit. Commander Hayes, you need to deploy now. Admiral Sullivan's voice crackled through the communication system. The enemy is adapting to our tactics faster than expected. Deep inside the largest Devourer cloud, Lucy Hayes looked at the massive disruptor array that filled her ship's cargo bay. The device was the most powerful quantum weapon ever built, designed to create a cascade failure that would spread through the entire cloud network. But deploying it meant certain death for her and her crew. Shadow to Fleet beginning final approach, Lucy announced calmly. It's been an honor serving with all of you. She guided her ship toward the exact center of the Devourer mass where the entity's quantum structure was most concentrated. The darkness around her ship grew so intense that the hull began to glow from the energy absorption. Warning alarms screamed as the vessel's systems started failing. Array deployed, Lucy called out as her ship released the massive disruptor device. Cascade initiation in 5 seconds, 4, 3, 2, 1. The explosion that followed was visible from Earth itself. A sphere of pure white light expanded through the Devourer cloud, breaking down quantum bonds and disrupting the entity's fundamental structure. For a moment it seemed like the plan had worked perfectly. Dr. Tony Clark watched his instruments with growing excitement as the cascade effect spread through the enemy formation. It's working. The disruption is propagating through their entire network. We're getting quantum failures across multiple clouds. But then something unexpected happened. Instead of collapsing completely, the Devourers began to adapt. The entities that were farthest from the cascade epicenter started changing their quantum structure, developing resistance to the disruption effect. They're learning from the attack, Dr. Campbell reported with horror in her voice. The surviving clouds are already immune to our cascade frequency. Admiral Sullivan made the hardest decision of her career. All ships implement contingency plan Omega. We're going to ram them. What followed was the most desperate battle in human history. Ship after ship dove into the Devourer clouds, their crews knowing they would never return home. The goal was no longer to destroy the enemy completely, but to damage them enough that they couldn't continue their galactic conquest. Captain Jake Morrison piloted the UES Redemption directly into the heart of the largest remaining cloud. His ship's quantum disruptors fired continuously, creating gaps in the entity's structure even as the vessel was slowly consumed. With his last transmission, he reported that the cascade had worked better than anyone hoped. The battle raged for 6 hours. When it finally ended, nearly half of the human fleet was gone, along with most of their alien allies. But the Devourers had paid a terrible price as well. Of the dozens of massive clouds that had threatened the galaxy, only 3 remained, and those were badly damaged. Dr. Tony Clark studied the aftermath from his position on Earth. The surviving entities are retreating toward intergalactic space, he reported. Our cascade disrupted their collective intelligence network. They can no longer coordinate effectively. Admiral Sullivan, now commanding from a badly damaged ship, surveyed the battlefield. What's their status? Are they still a threat? They're wounded and scattered, Tony replied. Without their network connection, they've reverted to basic survival behavior. They're fleeing the galaxy entirely. The news of humanity's victory spread quickly through the surviving civilizations. Species that had dismissed human warnings now found themselves owing their existence to the courage and ingenuity of the galaxy's newest members. Chancellor Vexhai, one of the few Altarian leaders to survive the Devourer assault, transmitted a formal apology to Earth. We were wrong to ignore your warnings, he admitted. Humanity has proven itself the true guardian of galactic civilization. In the months that followed, the surviving species looked to humanity for leadership in rebuilding their shattered worlds. Admiral Sullivan was elected as Supreme Commander of the new Galactic Defense Force, while Dr. Campbell headed the Xenobiological Threat Assessment Division to ensure such a disaster never happened again. The cost had been enormous. 19 of the original 47 Council species had been completely wiped out. Entire sectors of space were now empty graveyards where thriving civilizations had once existed. But the galaxy survived, and it did so because one species had the courage to face the unknown. Years later, as humans helped rebuild worlds and establish new colonies, people often asked what made the difference. Why had humanity succeeded where older, more advanced species had failed? The answer was simple but profound. When faced with an impossible threat, most species looked for reasons why they couldn't win. Humans looked for ways they could win. No matter the odds. The galaxy had learned a harsh lesson about the price of ignoring warnings, but it had also learned something valuable about the power of determination, sacrifice, and refusing to give up when everything seemed hopeless. Humanity had saved the galaxy, not through superior technology or ancient wisdom, but through the simple refusal to accept defeat. And in doing so, they had proven themselves worthy guardians of all life among the stars.